Hi, so I wanted to make a video explaining double grabbing. So even though it's a well-known glitch, it doesn't seem like most people understand it very well or know how to do it consistently, and there's a lot of subtleties about it in different situations with different items. So the first thing I should probably mention is that it's not as simple as just grabbing the two items on the same frame. Like if I just set them in the same spot here, and then I try to run into them from the side, you can see it doesn't work. So you actually need to grab them one frame apart from each other. Not only that, but you also have to pay attention to the item's memory rankings. So when I say memory rankings, what I mean is when you overlap two items, like if I hold this blue P-switch next to the silver one, you can see that the silver one appears in front, and the blue one kind of appears behind the silver one. And that happens no matter how I set them down and like what order I set them down or whatever. They're kind of like fixed. And that's basically a way of keeping track of which item has a higher rank. So the general rule is that the item that appears in front is a lower rank, and the item that appears behind is a higher rank. So you can compare two items' relative rankings by overlapping them like this. But this won't work for like two shells, for example, because then they would collide with each other if you tried to overlap them. But anyway, the way double grabbing works, and the thing you should probably take away from this video, is that in order to double grab, you need to touch the lower ranked item one frame before the other item. So in other words, you generally want the item in front to be sticking out a little bit. So you can see that the silver P-switch is in front. So I want it to kind of stick out a little bit in front of the blue one, and then run into them. And you can see that as long as the silver one is kind of sticking out a little bit, I can double grab pretty consistently just by kind of running into them like this. So the silver one needs to be kind of sticking out towards Mario a little bit, since it's in the lower rank. So that works for P-switches. It works for keys and P-switches. You can also do two keys together. So there's lots of different combinations you can do, and you can see the different rankings here. You can see that this key is in a lower rank than the blue P-switch, but it's in a higher rank than this silver P-switch, and it's in a lower rank than this silver P-switch. So you can kind of compare the different items. Springboards I'll talk about in a little bit. They're kind of complicated. Well, they're not complicated, but there's a lot of subtleties about them, so I'll talk about those later. The other thing to mention is that when comparing the rank of items from blocks with each other, it works the same way. So you can see that the blue P-switch is in a higher rank here than the silver P-switch. So if both the items came from a block, then you can compare their rankings with each other the same way. However, when you're comparing an item from a block with an item that wasn't from a block, then it kind of switches it on you, and it actually always appears in front, even though it's actually in a higher rank. So basically, when you're comparing two items from a block, when they're both from a block, the ranking is normal. It uses the normal graphics. And when you're comparing two items that aren't from a block, it follows the normal pattern. But when you're comparing one item from a block and one item not from a block, the item from the block will always appear in front, even though it's in a higher rank. So, anyway, there's some more subtleties to this regarding slot numbers, but I won't go into that in this video, so there are some exceptions to this, but anyway. Another thing to mention is that keys have a taller hitbox than P-switches, for example, and because of that, you can actually, if the key is lower ranked than the other item, you can actually double grab just by falling onto the two items at a certain speed, like that. And that's because you touch the key's hitbox before you touch the P-switches, since its hitbox is taller. So it's just another way to do a double grab. It's just a cool little way to do it. The problem is it's not going to work every time. It kind of depends on your speed coming down, and you can see that if you mess it up, you end up pressing the P-switch, so it's not really that useful. It depends on your movement pattern, it depends on your speed, it's not always going to work, and if you mess it up, you might end up pressing the P-switch, so it's not necessarily worth it, but it's just kind of a cool way to double grab. So... when you run into the items, you generally want them to be about 2 pixels apart. So, for example, right now, I can tell that these 2 items are 2 pixels apart. It's a little bit hard to tell, but... if you've done it enough, you can kind of eyeball it. And so I can tell that these 2 items are 2 pixels apart. The P-switch is closer to me, which is what I want because it's lower ranked, so this should work if I just kind of run into them. It doesn't always work, but should work. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry, the P-switch came from a block, so it's actually higher ranked. So let's do it with... Here, let's just use this one. Alright, so anyway, there we go. But anyway, there's actually an easy way to set it up to make sure that they're 2 pixels apart. If you just stand... If you're holding one item and you kind of run into the side of another item, as long as the items are solid and they kind of stop you like this, you can actually just stand next to the item and then hold down and drop the item. Oh, it actually didn't work that time. Well, if you hold down and drop the item, it should place it 2 pixels in front, like that. And then I have to do it from this side because the key is in the lower rank. So, basically you want to... You need to set the silver P-switch down. I don't know why it's not working. It should be setting him down 2 pixels. I guess it's kind of working. Should be setting it down 2 pixels in front of the other item. There we go. So now the key's in front. Anyway, so that's an easy way to set it up. And that works for keys and P-switches. It's probably the easiest way to set up a double grab, is just to, oh yeah, I gotta make sure I don't use the items from blocks, because they're backwards. Anyway, that's just an easy way to set up a double grab, is to, I guess I have to do it from this side, because the key is actually in the lower rank here. Right? I think so. Am I wrong about that? No, I got it. Okay. So, anyway. Yeah, just stand next to it, hold down, and release the item, and it should drop it 2 pixels in front. I don't know why it's not always working. Anyway. So, the reason that you want them to be 2 pixels apart is that when Mario's running, not sprinting, but just like running like this, he moves about 2 pixels per frame. So when they're 2 pixels apart, you should interact with the first item 1 frame before the other item. And sometimes Mario moves 3 pixels in 1 frame while he's running, so it won't always work, but it should work most of the time. Even if the items aren't 2 pixels apart, even if they're like 1 pixel apart, it'll still sometimes work just based on Mario's movement pattern leading up to the item. So let me try to set them 1 pixel apart. Alright, let's see if that works. Okay, it doesn't always work, but anyway, you can also run into them more slowly if they're closer together, so if they're only 1 pixel apart, you can try kind of slowing down your speed a little bit. Let me see if I can... I think that's 2 pixels. Okay, that's 1 pixel, so I can try running into them a little bit more slowly. There we go. So I didn't accelerate very much there, so that I had lower speed, so I was only moving 1 pixel per frame or so. Anyway, the point is that you can kind of tell how far apart they need to be based on how fast you're moving. Now, if you're sprinting, you actually want them to be about 3 pixels apart, because you move about 3 pixels per frame when you're sprinting. It'll work sometimes with 2, and it'll work sometimes with 4 even, when you're sprinting. It just kind of depends on your movement pattern and your speed, which oscillates, so it's not consistent. But anyway, so it's sort of random. Well, okay, so far I've shown keys and P-switches, but the other items have a little bit more to explain. So, for shells, Goombas, bombs, and buzzies... are there any I'm forgetting? I don't know. There's an extra thing you need to pay attention to. Mario can interact with keys and P-switches on every single frame, but he only interacts with enemies, including shells, on every other frame. So, not only do you need to touch the lower ranked item first, but you need to make sure you touch it on one of its active frames. So I'll show you what I mean. So let me get the... Where's the other P-switch? I guess I pressed it. Or is it here? There it is. Okay, so I think I want this one. I'm not really sure. No, wait, I want this one. Okay, so I'm gonna grab this shell. And you can see that the silver P-switch is sticking out toward Mario, which is what I want. But the problem is, you only interact with shells on every other frame. So there's basically a 50% chance that this will work, because I should touch the silver P-switch first, but there's no guarantee that I'll touch the shell one frame later, because the next frame might be one of the shell's inactive frames. And there's no way to distinguish the frames visually or anything like that, so basically it's just a 50% chance, and sometimes you'll end up kicking the shell like that. So, sometimes it'll work. There we go, it worked that time. Other times it won't. And there's not really much you can do about it. Another thing to mention is that you might think it's impossible to double grab two shells together since they collide with each other, but you actually can double grab them for one frame before they collide. Now, before I do this, let me turn on the script here. I need to adjust my... there we go. Sorry about that. So, I just need to see... Okay, this should work. So, now you can see the shell's hitboxes. You can also see their slot numbers over there on the right. Don't pay too much attention to all this, it's not super important. But basically, I just need to make sure that the shells have opposite parity. So, in other words, one shell is 9 and the other one is 6, so one is odd and one is even. That's what I want. So anyway, yeah, so you can actually double grab two shells for one frame before they collide with each other. You can't place them close to each other to run into them from the side like we did with the keys and the P-switches. So you have to land on them from above or do something similar. If you try to land on both of them at the same time, you'll end up touching them both on the same frame instead of one frame apart, right? Because you land on both of their hitboxes on the same frame. So I'm trying to land in between them. Okay, so something like that. Let me rewind and kind of... So you can kind of look at this. You can see on this frame, I touched both of their hitboxes on the same frame. Okay, so... this is where the interaction frame rule actually comes in handy, because you can interact with them while the lower ranked one is on its active frame and the other one isn't. And that way, you end up touching them one frame apart with the lower ranked one first. And like I said, you need the shells need to have opposite parity for this to work. So I need to land on them on the right frame. So that's not going to work. I need to maybe delay it one frame. There we go. This should work. So it's hard to tell, but basically, if I hold the button here. All right, so on this frame, I grab the lower ranked one. You can see the 8 appeared next to the 6. That means that I interacted with the right shell, but I didn't interact with the left shell. You can see that there was no 8 that appeared there. And if I go one more frame, you can actually see Mario holding both shells. He's actually... It's kind of hard to tell, but... he's holding both shells for one frame, and then they collide with each other. So... You only get to see it for one frame, and you can't see it very well, but it does he does technically grab it. And if you have a pipe right below where you grab the shells, you can actually enter the pipe on that one frame where you're double grabbing the shells, and you can bring both the shells through the pipe. And they'll collide with each other as soon as they come out on the other end of the pipe. But it's still kind of cool. But anyway, there's another way to double grab two shells, or even Goombas, or whatever. if you lick cancel by, so I need to lick up the shell and then take damage from the piranha plant so that Yoshi kind of interrupts his licking animation. Then what happens is that you can see that this shell, it will interact with this shell over, or actually it won't interact with this shell over here. So what happens is it no longer collides with anything, or at least it no longer collides with anything that's in a higher slot than it. So it won't interact with this shell when I'm holding it against it. It won't interact with this Goomba. So I can actually double grab two shells like this, just kind of set them next to each other, and then have the lower ranked shell kind of in front a little bit, so you can see the yellow hitboxes sticking out a little bit. And then I can run into them and double grab them like that. And yeah, that's another way to double grab two shells. Now, if you bring them through a pipe like this, the properties will get reset when you go into the next room, so they'll end up colliding with each other again. So it's still not really that useful, but it's just kind of cool. So that's another way to do it. The next thing to mention, so what I just did, you can also do with Goombas. You can double grab a Goomba in a shell, you can double grab two Goombas, for example. It's all kind of the same thing. So the next thing to mention, actually, the next thing to mention, I want to mention water. So when you're in water, Mario moves about 1 pixel per frame when he's not holding something. So that means you want the items to be about 1 pixel apart. So I'm gonna try to set this up. Let me turn off the hitboxes so you can see this a little bit better. But I'm gonna try to line the items up so that they're 1 pixel apart from each other. It's kind of hard to do when you're holding, like, it's hard to set this up. Okay, so they're 1 pixel apart, and the silver one is the lower ranked one, and it's closer to Mario, so this should work. Now, so when I'm swimming left and right like this, I'm moving about 1 pixel per frame, so in theory... Okay, it didn't work that time. Ah, there we go. It worked that time. So yeah, you need them to be 1 pixel apart if you're in water. So it's hard to set them up to be 1 pixel apart, but anyway. That's how you do it if they're in water. The other thing I want to mention is Baby Yoshi. I didn't mention this yet. So, Baby Yoshis. I guess what I want to talk about is... Well, let me turn back on the hitboxes. So you can see the Baby Yoshis when they're... Sorry. You can't double grab Baby Yoshi with, like, shells or Goombas or anything like that, at least not for more than 1 frame. And the other thing about Baby Yoshis is, once again, Mario only interacts with Baby Yoshi on every other frame, just like shells and Goombas and stuff. So, again, it's only a 50% chance. If I go try to double grab with... Oh, glitched graphics. Just ignore that. If I go try to double grab with the key, for example... it's only going to be a 50% chance of working. It worked that time, but should only work 50% of the time. There we go. It didn't work that time. So you can see... Anyway. So again, it's a 50% chance. Another thing to mention is that when he bounces up and down in his idle animation, I'm going to go ahead and just kill off this Yoshi, because he's just making the game lag. So, you can see his hitbox actually bounces up and down. So his hitbox is actually moving. And, so sometimes his hitbox will be above the other item. Let me grab one of these P-switches. Just one of them. So sometimes his hitbox will be above the other item. So if he's in a lower rank, then you can do the same thing that we did with the key, where you can kind of jump onto it from above, and sometimes, if you're lucky, should be working. There we go. It'll work sometimes, because he's bouncing up and down, so sometimes his hitbox will be above. And you can double grab that way as well. And of course your downward speed matters and the frame rule matters. The other thing to mention is that if you're double grabbing two baby Yoshis together, you have to have them opposite slot parity or else it won't work, because once again the frame rule means that basically you only interact with even slotted sprites on even frames and odd slotted sprites on odd frames. So you can see that since both these Yoshis are even slotted, one is a 6 and one is a 2, there's no way I can double grab them, because I'm not going to be able to interact with one and then the other on the next frame, because their active frames and their inactive frames are synced up. So if I grab one on its active frame, then on the next frame the other one's going to be inactive and I won't be able to grab it. So they have to have opposite slot parity. Let me try to see what... Let me, like, shuffle the sprite slots here by going and getting rid of... Here, let me press these P-switches. I don't need them anymore. Let me see if this fixes it. No, 4 and 6. Alright, let me try dropping him in the hole here. 4 and 6 again. Let me get rid of the key. That should do it. If I get rid of the key. And then I get rid of one of the baby Yoshis. This is kind of complicated. It doesn't matter which one I get rid of. Just need to respawn him. Okay, so now they have opposite slot parity, so I should be able to double grab them. I need the lower slotted one to be in front, and then I run into them. There we go. So anyway. Alright, so the last thing to talk about is springboards. So I have a little setup over here, where I'm going to go through this door to reload the area. So I've now got 10 springboards over there. The game's kind of laggy. But anyway, so the springboards, if the springboard is the higher ranked item, let me go ahead and actually get a P-switch. So let me get P-switch. Let me get rid of 2 of these springboards. 7 and 8. Oh gosh, I didn't realize I had 3 with me. Okay, so... Oh my gosh, let me rewind that. Sorry about the lag. Okay, so... if the springboard is the higher ranked item, which it is right now, then you can use any of the other methods. You can just, like, run into them from the side. So basically, in this case, we have the silver P-switch is sticking out a little bit. It's in the lower rank, so this should work if I just run into them. Okay, I might not have had enough speed there. There we go. So you can see I managed to double grab both of them. Let me get rid of the hitboxes one more time, so you can see this a little bit more clearly. So if I run into these, I can double grab them just like you would expect. The other thing, though, is that you can actually grab both items on the same frame, and it will actually work. So I mentioned before that to double grab, you have to grab the items one frame apart. But if you're double grabbing with a springboard, and the springboard is higher ranked, then you can actually grab them on the same frame, and it'll work. So there's a few ways to grab them on the same frame. One is to have them sitting in the exact same spot. Like that. And then just kind of run into them, like that. So as long as the springboard is the higher rank, you can grab them on the same frame. And you can also wedge yourself in between the spring and another solid item. So what you can do, for example, is... How would I set this up? I guess just... I'm going to throw this springboard upward. I'm going to run in between the two items. And now you can see... I'm kind of like stuck in between the two items. Let me do this in a better spot, actually. Let me get the springboard over here. Okay, so I'm going to toss the springboard up, run in between the two items, and now you can see I'm overlapping both the springboard and the P-switch, so if I just press Y right now, I grab both of them. You didn't have to jump. I didn't mean to jump there. There we go. So you can actually just grab them both on the same frame if you're overlapping both of their hitboxes at the same time. So there's lots of cool ways you can set it up when the springboard is higher ranked. The trick only works if the spring is in a higher rank, though. If the spring's in a lower rank, it's a bit more tricky. And the reason is that you can't have the spring stick out and run into it from the side like we've been doing. So let me get rid of this springboard. I don't need it right now. And now we've got... So this time the spring is in a lower rank. So the problem is, normally what we would do is we would set the springboard down so that it's sticking out in front a little bit, and then we just run into it, right? The problem is that as soon as you run into it, it kills your speed, and you stop dead in your tracks before you get a chance to touch the other item. So in order to touch them one frame apart, you actually need the other item to come to you instead. So one way to do that is to throw the item upwards and then get ready to grab the spring one frame before it lands on you. So I'll show you what I mean. Basically what you need to do, if the spring is in a lower rank, you toss the P-switch up kind of to the side of the spring a little bit, and then you stand here and you get ready to grab the springboard at just the right time. So you can see I save stated to make this a little bit easier. So if I run in and grab the spring first, then nothing happens, I just grab the spring. If I let the P-switch land on me, then I just grab the P-switch. But if I grab the spring one frame before the P-switch lands on me, then I can double grab them. So, that's what you have to do if the spring is in a higher rank. It's pretty hard to do, but really that's the best way to double grab with a higher rank spring, or a lower rank spring, I'm sorry. So when the spring is in a higher rank, I mentioned it's possible to grab both items on the same frame. Well, because of that, you actually have an extra frame to chain a third grab as well, since you only used one frame for the first two. So what I mean by that is you can actually triple grab. So let's say I need to get rid of... I'll get rid of this P-switch and respawn it. Oh wait, yes, respawn it. Guess... Oh no, hold on, rewind. Okay. I need to get rid of this springboard. And then spawn this P-switch. Okay, so the reason I wanted to do that is I want the springboard to be middle ranked. So I need to have a springboard in slot 8. Right now the baby Yoshi is in slot 8, so I need to fix that. Okay, so now I've got a springboard in slot 8, so it's in between the two P-switches. Its slot number. So basically it's middle ranked, right? And when you have this situation, so basically we can grab these two items on the same frame. We already mentioned that if the spring is higher ranked, then you can grab both of these on the same frame. You don't have to grab them one frame apart. You can grab them one frame apart, but you don't have to. So, since you can grab both of these on the same frame, that means you can grab this third item one frame after. So you can kind of chain it into a triple grab. So, you have to make sure that the third item is in a higher rank than both the other items. Okay, so, and to set this up, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set, I'm gonna get rid of that spring, I'm gonna set this springboard down, I'm gonna set this P-switch down, right there. So now if I just jump straight up, I should be able to grab both of them at the same time, yeah. So because the spring is higher ranked, when I jump into both of their hitboxes at the same time, I grab them both at the same time. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this extra item into the mix, but I can't just set it down there because I need to make sure I grab the third item one frame after the first two. So I grab the first two on the same frame, and then the third item one frame after. So in order to set that up, I'm going to throw the P-switch up, and then I'm going to, just as it comes down, just like we did before, I'm going to try to make it land on me one frame after I grab the first two items. So it's a little tricky to time this. It might be easier if I pull up the frame counter so I can time this a little bit better. So 500. It also might be easier if I turn on the hitboxes again. I'm indecisive. So let's do 506. Getting a lot of lag frames. So I need to wait a little bit longer. 508. No, 512. Okay, that's too much, so 510 probably will work. Oh, maybe not. I might have to set this up again. I didn't get any frames that worked there, seems like. Okay, let's see if I can get this. 950? 980? No, that's too much. 964? Uh... 961. Let's do 955. No, 958. There we go. Alright, I got all three. So you can actually triple grab with one spring and two other items. So in order for that to work, the spring has to be middle ranked between the other two items. Okay? So. Alright, so. Anyway. Finally, the last thing to talk about is grabbing multiple springboards together. So as it turns out, you can actually grab as many springboards together as you want. You basically just need to touch them on the same frame. So I'll go ahead and show you here. Well, okay, it's a little bit complicated. When you touch the springs, each spring will sort of attempt to push you to its side. Like, I think it's like 1 pixel at a time, and it's like additive. So if you have a whole cluster of springs stacked together, like I do here, each one will push you 1 pixel, and you'll get shoved out of the side of the cluster. So if I run into this, I just get pushed out. And sometimes I can grab more than one. Let's see if I can get it to work this time. I don't know why I'm only grabbing one here. There we go, I managed to grab 2 there. So basically what's happening is this all takes place within a single frame where they push you out. So eventually you'll get pushed too far to grab the rest of the springs. So in other words, if you run into a cluster of springboards, you'll only grab as many as the number of pixels that you dipped into the cluster in descending order of rank. So what I mean by that is that if you look at Mario's hitbox in relation to the springboards, when I get close here, you can see Mario's speed is about 36 subpixels, so he's moving about 2 pixels per frame. So on this frame, the hitboxes are about to overlap, and he's going to move 2 pixels in the next frame. So he ends up grabbing 2 of the springboards. And if I'm sprinting, I can move... Wait, I wanna... Oh, wow. That's not what I meant to do. Let me go back there. So if you're sprinting, you move about 3 pixels per frame. So you can actually dip into the cluster a little bit more. So let me go through the door. Go through the door. There we go. So let me try to get sprinting speed here. Okay. So he's moving about 3 pixels per frame. Let's see if it aligns. Yeah, it looks like it'll align. So in this case, I dipped into the cluster 3 pixels, and I managed to grab 3 springboards, 9, 8, and 7. So basically, the number of pixels that you kind of dip into the cluster is the number of springboards you'll manage to grab, and the ones that you grab go in descending order of rank. So you grab the highest rank one first, and then the next one, and then the next one, but it all takes place within 1 frame. So, if you want to grab more than 3, you can't really move any faster than you can while sprinting. So the only thing you can really do is try to grab them from below, so that you're further from the side. So what I mean by that is I'm gonna stack these guys, make another cluster like over here. Oh no, that's not where I wanted that. Oh gosh, what am I doing? Okay, so I'm gonna see how many of these I can grab. So I'm gonna stack them. There we go. This is a little bit tedious. I just want to see how many of these I can actually grab using this method. I need to stand in just the right spot here. It also would be easier if I turned the hitboxes off again. Alright. So that I can actually see what's going on. Okay. How many more are left? Jesus. Okay. Okay. 2 more? Or maybe just 1 more. Maybe I double grabbed. Nope. Need to be 1 pixel further this way. Okay. So they're all stacked on top of each other. Now I'm going to try to grab them from below. So you can see, now when I grab them from below, I'm going to be further from the side. So I'm sort of dipped into the side by some number of pixels. So you can see that I actually managed to get a large number of springboards. I got, what, 6? I think 6. So basically, the further into the cluster you are, the longer it takes you to get pushed out. It doesn't really take longer, it still only takes 1 frame, but within a frame it takes longer for you to get pushed out, so you get more springboards out of it. So anyway, the best thing to do if you really want to grab all of them is to grab them from below, but also have a wall to stop you. So for example, when they're right on this rope here, I can just jump up, and I can grab all of them. So I have 10 springboards now in my hands. So what happened there is that the wall stopped me from getting ejected. You can also use a wall like this, I suppose. Although the problem with this is that you'll probably get crushed inside the wall. Yeah, see, I didn't grab all of them. Like, I'm already pushed out. Okay, I see what's happening, yeah. So if you do it like this, you still get pushed out. You just get shoved inside the wall. But if you have them all stacked on top of each other on the rope like that, then when you jump up, you get pushed into the corner there, and then you kind of... Basically, it just gives you more time before you get fully ejected. And you end up being able to grab all 10 of them before you get ejected from the cluster. So anyway, for my final trick, I'll show you how to grab 9 springs and 2 P-switches all at the same time. So I'm gonna go in the door. Whoops. I said I'm gonna go in the door. So you can grab... okay, what I want to do is I want to grab the... this guy. Actually, let me think about this. No, I need to grab the one that's in slot 0. This is kind of annoying. Alright, so I need to get rid of this guy. And then the other ones I need to set down. Oops. Nope. It's really awkward to do this. Come on, 1 pixel. That is 1 pixel, okay. Okay. Now, let me set this springboard down. And then I need to grab this P-switch. It needs to be... So, just like before, in order to grab 2 extra P-switches, I need the springboard cluster needs to be middle ranked. So it needs to be between the 2 P-switches. So the P-switch is the highest rank, the blue P-switch is the highest rank, the silver P-switch is the lowest rank, and the cluster of springboards is in the middle. So combining all of that together, I need to set this down where the springboards are, so that I can grab them all at the same time. And then lastly, I need to toss this up, and I need it to land on me just as I grab the cluster. So, this is a little bit hard to... Let me see if I can do this. It'll be easier with the hitboxes. So 688, 696. I wonder why it's not working. It looked like that would have worked. 698. Let's try this. 694. Alright, I'm gonna have to set this up again. Let me get the... There we go. That's 9 springboards and 2 P-switches, all at the same time. And that's the most you can do. You can't do 12 items because you would need at least one of the springboards would have to be from your reserved box or something, so that it goes into the right sprite slot. But anyway, that's basically all there is to it. That's double grabbing. Everything you ever wanted to know about double grabbing. And then the reason it works, it's basically the flag, so to speak, for whether you're grabbing something doesn't get set until like the next frame. And the reason you need to grab the lower ranked one first is that it gets processed later. Anyway, I'm not gonna go into that right now, but that's how you double grab. And thanks for watching.